I laughed with my lover about him. He played the recording at our kid's birthday. I messed up big time, and now the consequences of my actions are suffocating me. My name is Eve. I've been married to my husband, James, for 10 years, and we have a 7-year-old kid together. James is a teacher for special needs kids, and that job took a lot of his time and energy. I never complained, to be frank, I didn't mind. I supported him, and what he was doing was important. And I was happy he was always busy and so into his job, because while he was pouring his heart into work and being there for those kids, I was out here cheating on him. This was not just a one-time thing or a mistake, but it was an act that happened regularly, like full-on affair. I was sneaking around, lying, and covering my tracks. I hate saying this, but I got comfortable doing it, and my husband was totally in the dark because he was too occupied trying to help those kids. There's no particular backstory about how I started cheating. I can't even remember the first time I cheated, but I do remember when it stopped being random and turned into something serious. That was with Jacob. I started cheating seriously with him. He was a guy who stopped me one morning asking for directions to my workplace. I told him I worked there and just took him in myself. Later, I found out he was the new supplier for the factory I worked at, and not long after, my boss told me I'd be the one attending to Jacob personally. Apparently, he requested me. That caught me off guard, but I didn't complain. It came with benefits, longer breaks when he came around, extra tips here and there, and even coffee runs on his tab. He was funny, easy to talk to, and he made work a little less boring. One day, my boss asked me to go pick up some documents from Jacob. When I got to his office, he didn't waste time. He straight up told me he got hard every time he saw me. He said he knew it was wrong, but he couldn't help it, and he just wanted to say it and get it off his chest. I was a little bit surprised. Nobody had ever said something like that to me so directly. So I asked him if he was hard right then, and he told me I could come feel it if I didn't believe him. So I did. Yeah, I know that sounds insane, but I was a crazy person then, so I actually felt it, and he wasn't lying. And he was huge, and the next thing I did was unzipped his pants, and then we had sex right there in his office. And he was good, like really good. I was already thinking about the next time we could do it while we were still in the middle of it. That's how amazing it was. So he became my constant lover. It got really serious. We were hooking up everywhere. His office, my office, his house, my house, his car, my car, nonstop. One day he dropped me off at home while my husband was around, and as I got out of the car, Jacob spanked my ass. I think my husband saw it because the moment I walked in, he asked why that guy touched my ass. I immediately said he was just wiping off something from my skirt, some office stain. I was honestly impressed with how quick I came up with that answer. I even gaslighted my husband after, telling him he was seeing things that weren't there. And it worked. He had no reason to doubt me or think anything was going on, so he just let it go. A few days later, I went to pick up my son from school and saw Jacob there too. He was picking up his nephew since his sister wasn't available. I was starstruck because meeting him was unexpected. I honestly didn't believe I'd ever met Jacob in that kind of place because he had no business. After that day, he started coming to pick up his nephew more often, and I kept volunteering to pick up my son. We'd get there early and hook up in one of our cars before anyone showed up. One day, I went to pick up my son, and, to my surprise, my husband was there too. He had come to get our son, and there'd been a total break in communication between us that morning. Jacob saw both of us and actually came over. They shook hands and introduced themselves, and thankfully then, he didn't sense anything. The next day, Jacob came to my office. We hooked up, and he said he'd wait so we could go to the school together. While we were talking, my marriage came up, and he asked about my husband. I told him the truth, but not everything. Let's just part of it. My husband was a bit of a weirdo. I guess that's what made him relate better with the kids he taught. I said I only married him because he was a good person, and not because he was exciting or attractive. He was kind, yeah, but also boring, overly serious, and way too predictable. He had this weird obsession with rules and always overthinking everything. To be sincere, sometimes he was emotionally distant, and that drove me crazy more than once. But I stopped caring about that a long time ago. Then, a few days later, I got into a huge fight with my husband. He'd been acting really suspicious about me and Jacob, and that day it boiled over. He accused me of kissing Jacob in front of our son, and said our son had seen it and told him about it. I completely lost it. I just couldn't take it in anymore. I told him he was an idiot, because only an idiot would believe what a kid says without proof. Things spun out of hand. I got so mad I threw my shoe at him, and it hit his face. He was injured, I know. I have a temper, and I need to work on it. Anyways, he was bleeding a little, and then he stormed out of the house angrily. I kept yelling after him, calling him weak and pathetic, basically rage-baiting him the entire way to make him leave faster. I hated him in that moment, and I just wanted him to leave my sight and environment. I just couldn't stand him. After about 30 minutes, he came back in and just went straight to our son's room. I was so bitter and angry that I couldn't even look at him. I felt the same with my son as well. I hated him too for being the cause of this bitter moment in our lives. Who knew you could give birth to the weapon formed against you? I sat there for a while, stewing in anger, with my hands gripping the edge of the couch. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore, so I angrily grabbed my coat, slammed the door behind me, and left the house. It was raining outside. You would have thought the cold drops would calm me down, but it didn't. I had called Jacob, so I went to meet up with him. He knew I was angry, so he came to my car to see me. The moment I saw him, I just started venting. He asked me what happened, and I explained everything to him and how my husband reacted. I told him straight up that my husband was a foolish prick, and he was seriously getting on my nerves. Jacob tried to calm me down by telling me my husband wasn't even worth my rage. He called my husband a simpleton, insulting him in every way he could think of. And I don't know how, but hearing someone badmouth my husband as much as I love to made me laugh. As Jacob kept going, I couldn't stop myself. I laughed hard, and it was loud and almost hysterical if I remember clearly. You know, after holding in anger and frustration for too long, I was not surprised with why I laughed that way. Then I started adding my own insults, calling my husband all sorts of names and saying he wasn't able to handle me, and he was too wretched and useless for me. Jacob just grinned the whole time while I kept going. Then, after that, we had sex right there in the car. It was very loud, and there was no holding back from any of us. Jacob thrust harder than usual, which made me forget everything else, even the anger that had been eating at me all day. I also felt lighter and better after that. A few days later was my son's birthday, and truth be told, I didn't even want to celebrate him. I was still angry at him for what I saw as him trying to ruin my marriage. In my head, he was the devil who was trying to break us apart and hated him for that. My husband was going all in for him, planning the party, buying gifts, getting all excited, and as his mother, I had no choice but to be there at the party. During the party, I pretended to be cheerful, smiling at people, helping with decorations, taking pictures, but all while my stomach was twisting with anger. Seeing my son happy and acting all innocent made me more angry. On the other hand, my husband was all smiles, throwing himself into the party and acting like nothing was wrong. Then, as the party was going on and the DJ was playing music, people were laughing and having fun, and the kids were just running around, and then, suddenly, the song just cut out. And then I heard me and Jacob's voices blasting through the speakers. All the insults towards my husband, and everything I'd laughed about with Jacob was playing right there in the middle of the party. People started looking around, then at me. My face was burning. I felt embarrassed, humiliated, and my temper started flaring. I walked straight to my husband and asked him to come out for a chat. I didn't want to make a scene in front of everyone, but he refused, saying he had no intention of hearing me out, and that I should just say what I wanted to say right there. I snapped. I told him that I won't let him embarrass me anymore, and that he better behave and come out with me, but he stayed stubborn and refused to make a move. The anger surged so fast I didn't even care anymore. I started shouting at him, my voice cracking and echoing over me and Jacob's voice that were playing in the background. I asked him why he would do something like this, trying to make me look like the villain in front of everyone when he was clearly the one who accused me falsely and pushed me into acting this way. Then I completely lost it. I was pacing, shouting, slamming my hands on tables, throwing cups, and yelling at him across the room. Parents started calling their kids over, trying to get them out of the way as they sensed the chaos. Some people were just murmuring, unsure what to do. Eventually, I think someone managed to get the kids outside. I turned back to my husband. I was furious, so I slapped him hard because he was ignoring me. He stepped back and threatened me, saying I shouldn't push him or he'd awaken the other side of him. I told him I didn't care. I was giving him exactly what he needed. I grabbed him by his shirt, shaking with rage, and people were trying to pull us apart. I shouted at him, calling him a wicked person for trying to ruin my life and reputation. I asked him what kind of man would set his own wife up like this. He just stared at me and said my reputation was already ruined, that he was only trying to minimize the damage. But since I kept acting out, he was going to play the full recording. I told him not to dare, but then he did it. And that was an audio sex recording of me and Jacob playing right there in front of everyone. I froze. I couldn't believe he did that. My stomach dropped, and my face was burning as if it was on fire. I didn't even care about whatever nonsense people were muttering. I was weakened, and I just fell to the floor. Then my husband walked up to me and said that now he had proof. If my tongue had been cut off, and if he wasn't smart enough to put a recorder in the car and my coat that night before I left, he'd be haunted, battling with guilt, and thinking he had falsely accused me and our son saw wrong, not knowing I was cheating with Jacob, laughing at him and making a fool out of this family. Then he sighed and walked away. I couldn't even say a word. I was ashamed, so I just stayed there, crying my eyes out. Hours later, after everyone had gone, I went to my husband. I told him I was sorry and begged for his forgiveness. I was expecting him to raise his voice, get mad, and get over it. But then, he just said I should start thinking about packing my things out because he could no longer accommodate me. He said we were getting a divorce. I broke down, begging him to change his mind, but then he asked if it was just Jacob. I said yes. He looked me straight in the eye and told me I was lying. He asked how I expected him to forgive me when I was still lying to his face. And that's when I just told him the whole truth, that I had been cheating on him our entire marriage. He was quiet for a second, and then asked me why. I couldn't even answer because I didn't know what to say. He asked if there was something he wasn't doing for me, why I would go around messing with other men. I pleaded with him, saying I didn't know what came over me, that I was sorry and fully repentant now, and that I wanted to make things right. He shook his head and said I was only repentant because I got caught, that I never would have stopped on my own. He told me he wasn't going to stay married to someone who shared her body with the world, and that he wasn't ready to live that kind of life with me. Then he told me again to start packing my stuff. After that, he walked out and left me there crying on the floor, not knowing what to do or where to go. So after I was done crying, it finally sank in that things were never going to go my way. So I stormed straight into my son's room. He was sitting on the floor playing with his toys, but I didn't care. I told him point blank that he was the cause of all my problems, and that if he had just kept quiet, none of this would have happened, and his father would never have suspected anything. I told him that since he started this whole thing, he was going to help me fix it. He just stared at me with big, wet eyes, and then started crying, and he was very loud. He cried to the point that it shook his chest, but I told him I didn't care if he was crying or not, and that all that I want is for him to tell his father, when he comes back, that he is not ready to live his life without me, since he was the one that caused this whole thing from the onset, and now he was going to make it right. He just cried harder. His wailing was loud, and I told him to shush, to stop making a sound. I told him I wasn't even doing anything bad to him, and I was only just asking him to fix what he broke, but he just kept crying, screaming even, and I got angrier and angrier. I told him he should think carefully about what would happen if he didn't do what I asked him to do, and that's when my husband walked back in. He saw the look on our son's face, and then he tore me apart with abusive words, calling me a terrible mother, and telling me I was cruel for even involving our son in this mess. Then he picked up our son, held him close, and told me that he never wanted to see me near him again. He didn't even let me respond. He just told me I needed to pack my things and move out that night, and that I should know that I am banned from ever stepping foot there again. I didn't leave instantly or willingly. I stood my ground right there, yelling that I wasn't going anywhere because I was only fighting for my marriage. I told him I hadn't done anything wrong, and that all I wanted was for him to see how desperate I was to make things right. I begged him to stop looking at everything through the worst possible lens. I said, I didn't even hurt our son, and I don't even know why he was crying like that, and that he's only just trying to make me look like some kind of monster when I'm not. But he said no problem and left the house with our son, and when he came back, our son wasn't with him anymore. I don't know if he dropped him off with family or a neighbor, but I know for a fact that he didn't want me anywhere near that child anymore, and also didn't want him to witness any more of our messed up lives. Then he started throwing my things out, one by one, my clothes, my bags, even my shoes. I tried to grab them back, screaming at him to stop, but he wouldn't. I was yelling, crying, completely breaking down in front of him, but he didn't even flinch. I ended up outside, standing by the pile of my own things and not knowing what to do with myself. I called Jacob over and over, but he wasn't picking up. I dropped him so many messages that night, desperate for him to answer, but he never called back. I was tempted to just go to his place, but I didn't even know if he was home, and I couldn't bear another disappointment. So I just took my things and checked into a lodge nearby, just to have somewhere to sleep. Now it's been hours. Jacob still hasn't called me back. My husband isn't speaking to me. I have no idea what to do next. Update. There's no need for everyone to chew me up. I already know how terrible I was to my son. I've had enough time to sit with myself and replay that night over and over in my head. And if I'm being honest, it eats me alive. I was angry, and I was out of control, and I let my emotions completely take over me. I had no plan, no real intention to hurt my son. I was just blinded by rage at my husband and the whole situation, so I wasn't thinking straight. I have tried to make it up to him since then, but my husband isn't even allowing me to. He went ahead and got a restraining order against me, saying that our son could be in possible danger if he stays around me. So now, I can't even get close to him. I can't pick him up from school, I can't call him, and I can't even drop off a letter. And I get it, it's all my fault. I let my temper get a hold of me, but I feel like my husband is going too far. And I feel terrible for all those moments when I sat there in the house hating him and blaming him for ruining my marriage, when really he was just a child who saw something he shouldn't have seen and spoke up about it. I keep thinking about why I was reckless with my life and try to blame it on my son. I regret that every day. Anyways, my husband has officially filed for divorce. He's also fighting for full custody of our son, which at this point I'm sure he's going to get, because everyone is on his side. Now his family, my family, and our friends who were not present at the party knows what happened, because apparently the recording from our fight that night was leaked online. Yes, the one where I completely lost it and was screaming and cursing and slamming things around, and they're all backing him. Other people have heard it as well, including extended family. Even people at my job are talking about it. Now, everyone gets to watch and judge my entire life based on a video. And of course, they're all supporting my husband, saying he's right for getting rid of me. So nothing is going my way. I have lost everything: my son, my marriage, my respect, and my reputation. A few weeks ago, I met up with Jacob. I called him over and over until he finally agreed to meet me. I was hoping maybe he'd be the one person who'd stick by me and would let me stay with him until I figured things out. But he basically told me he was done. He said he was no longer interested in me and that he couldn't accommodate me or get involved in my drama. He told me he was about to get married to someone else and that he couldn't handle any emotional issues with me on the side. And then, to make matters worse, he threatened me. He said if I try to drag him into this or cause problems for him in any way, he'll make sure I lose my job. That was the moment I realized that I was only just a tool for Jacob to use and discard at any time. I regretted even mocking my husband with him and putting myself so low before him, and I feel so betrayed. I've tried to call my husband so many times since then, and I have also tried to get him to just sit with me and hear me out, but he won't even pick up my calls. It's like I don't exist to him anymore, except as the person he's divorcing. I keep thinking about just showing up at his place and begging in person. Maybe he might change his mind, but the restraining order is there, and I know if I even try to go near him or my son, I could get arrested. So now I'm just alone, sobbing every night, and thinking about everything I've lost. Thinking about how I ruined my own marriage with my own hands. Thinking about how my son probably hates me now. Thinking about how my family looks at me like I'm nothing more than a shame and a disgrace. I don't think I'm even angry anymore. I'm just feeling completely empty, and I don't think I have fully accepted the fact that they're no longer part of my life.